JP Morgan's actually doing a really good program where they have set up different teams with like just autistic people in the team, and they outperform, they out-train. First of all, it takes them 3 months to what other people takes 3 years to learn how to do something, and then they outperform them by 50%. And so there's this whole marginalized group of people who are so good at what they do that just haven't been able to get into the workforce. Like here in the UK, it's about 83% of people who are autistic are underemployed or unemployed. And it's about the same, about 85% of employers say that they can't find enough good people to do work. So those numbers match almost exactly. It's just kind of a given.
Hello and welcome to another Open Source Workplace interview. Today I'm interviewing Amanda Irwin. Amanda is a founding workplace director at Thirdway Workplace. So before we make that introduction, I remind you to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you're alerted to all upcoming interviews. So Amanda, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, Steve. Thanks for having me today. I'm really stoked to be featured on here and chat about workplace.
No, I'm excited, as I said, to sort of chat with you. I know the company you're from, and I know the individuals within that company, and I know you do things a little bit differently, hence the name Thirdway. So I'm excited to dive into this. But before we dive into that, you've got a little different background. You're not what I would call someone who studied workplace to become a workplace designer or consultant. You studied psychology. Then you went into wine. So help me understand how that journey started for you.
Yeah, well, I think as we've spoken about, not a lot of people study workplace. We all kind of find our way here differently. So I studied psychology just as an associate's degree. And then when I was back home in Washington State, and then made my way to California, where I fell in love with wine, which, most people do there multiple times a day, every day. Once I did that, I ended up traveling the world with it. So I studied agricultural business and finance and viticulture, and then I did an internship in enology. So that allowed me to travel. I did 3 years back and forth between California, New Zealand, and South Africa. And somewhere in the middle there, I met my husband, who is South African, and then relocated to Johannesburg for about 3 years. There I managed an office, which was a wine importing company. And then we've been in London for about 4 years. So it brings us to where we are.
4 continents, that's a lot. Not many people can sort of claim that. So well done you. I have to ask, which continent did you prefer to live on? Obviously, taking into consideration I'm from the UK, not trying to be biased or anything here.
No, I see. You can't say. They all have their own redeeming qualities, and I miss them all. I felt every time that I moved from one to the next, every time I would refer to home, it would be the last place that I was. No, I love them all. They all have a lot of memories. The UK is fantastic. I mean, it's halfway between my family in the States and Sean's family in South Africa, and we can go to Europe, and so it's we've decided to settle here full time.
Great. If only you had the weather of both those locations in London, it would be perfect, right?
Yeah, that is one downside.
Yeah. No, I hear you. So you're in the wine business. How then did you get into the workplace? What was that transition? What pulled you?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people go to workplace via office management and kind of facilities because you're used to doing that stuff every day. You're used to making sure that your employees and colleagues are happy, but you're also used to having to make some decisions around your own workplace, build those business cases around them, move people around, and all of that. So it's not that strange that I ended up in it. I think I was doing office management in wine in Johannesburg, and then when I came to London, I ended up kind of inadvertently at a workplace research and benchmarking firm. Essentially, it was for investment banks, and from there, we brought together a lot of CFOs, CTOs, all that kind of thing into roundtables to talk about what was going on in their businesses, in the industry, but then also benchmarking around their office spaces. So what is the desk cost? What was the people cost? What's this all add up to? And so from there, long story short, that company was purchased and I moved on, and I ended up in independent workplace consultancy, which is where I really found my feet and really fell in love with it and realized how much good it can do and how exciting it is when you're able to take the people aspect of it and all the data aspect and give people some really cool solutions.
Yeah. So is that what you love about the workplace, the consulting and being able to impact people?
Yeah, definitely. I love the engagement part and really getting to know and understand a company. And so obviously the longer that you can get engaged with them, the better, because then you just get to know them inside out. But I'm also very passionate about the data and analytics. I think they're, yeah, I mean, as we've talked about, I think they're both really important. It's you can get all that data and all that evidence, but then you have to contextualize it. And at the end of the day, it's the people. It's people first. It's making their lives work. But unless you come with all this data, you can then convince the top line, bottom line rather, and get those changes made.
Got it. No, I totally agree. Totally agree. And I love it and I buy into it. It's fantastic. So you're a founding director at Thirdway Workplace. How did that come about?
Yeah, so Ben Gillum, who's the CEO of Thirdway Group, he had an interest in creating another entity in the group, which was with the workplace strategy and consulting. So throughout Thirdway's history, started out as design and build company. You're very familiar with interiors, and that was about just over 10 years ago. And in the kind of evolution of filling out all of our offerings, it's gotten more to an end-to-end solution. So it's become, we have Thirdway architecture, we have a traditional contracting, we have furniture procurement, we have prop tech. Um, and one of the other things was just workplace consultancy. So being able to add evidence to it, both tenants and landlords are realizing that you have to put the people first. You have to design the building around the people, not design the building and then put the people into it, of course, as we know, that doesn't work as well. So Ben was really keen to get it started. So we were connected, met up, and just said, okay, great, let's do this. And I joined officially just about a year ago, and it's been an incredible experience.
Great, great. So then putting people first, how do you do that? Because obviously you're, a company's bringing you in. How do you quickly understand what the directive is as part of the scope of the work, but then understanding the employees? What tools, what things do you use to ascertain those things quickly?
Yeah, sure. So we have a toolbox that's pretty normal for any workplace consultancy. That is, and each client is different. So you figure out what they need help with first. Do they already have a business case and they need you to support it or negate it and give them that confidence to make a decision one way or the other? Do they have no idea what anybody wants and they just want you to come in and help them guide you on that, or help do some change management? So really kind of try to do a lot of the same tools, and then you just do them with different scales. So it's a visioning and objective workshop to talk to the leaders to say, okay, what are we doing here? Why do you call this in? And be able to set some kind of guiding principles. And then it's all of the engagements and all the data gathering. So one-to-one interviews, empathy mapping, embedding, where you actually sit there, observe the space, do user journeys yourself. So it is important when we come in and we get invited into the building and we go to the meeting room. That's all part of our analysis, of course. And then it's the occupancy studies, which of course is desk counting and understanding that, filing and storage audits if required, an online survey. And then through all of that, we then start doing focus groups, workshops, and get to their recommendations.
So I just want to go back to one of the things you mentioned. Was it empathy mapping? Is that what you called it? What is that?
Yes, that's something that we created. I got the idea from a client. They were using a tool to help some of their people understand a user journey and concerns around certain things. So we tried that with them. We kind of co-created the tool, and then I thought, well, that doesn't actually work quite right, but let's try it with another client. We call it empathy mapping, and that's where you sit down and you sit down with an anonymous interview. So people are really free to tell you, how they actually feel. So you ask them, how do they see the workplace? How do they talk about it, outside the workplace? How do they feel? What do they hear other people saying? And you just get a few more tidbits. It's not asking them to gossip in any way or form, but it's just saying, please be completely open and honest. This is about you. This is about your workplace. And that's, as I said, all of that contextualizes the data.
Mm-hmm. No, it's really interesting, and I love the empathy aspect of it because I think it also helps break down barriers between employees and sort of communicating what there is. Do you find employees open up much more to you as a third-party consultant than they would perhaps of an internal facility manager, workplace practitioner? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, 100%. And you often, usually you kind of do things one-to-one, but sometimes you have, your project sponsors, your facilities managers, your HR in the room with you, and you'll come out of an interview and like, wow, that was really interesting. Things that they thought they kind of knew about it, because of course they'll give you a brief before. But once you get in there and you're asking all these open-ended questions, but then you kind of just keep going. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Let's talk more about that. You find out so much stuff, and people really are more willing to come forward. And also, if the client's able to be transparent about what's happening, you can say, this is for you. This is what we're trying to do. This is why we're talking to you. Like, please give us the more information. It's going to be best for you, best for the team, everything.
Got it. Got it. Now, based in London, are most of your clients London-based, or are they global?
So at the moment, focusing mostly on London-based clients, but doing more and more work with global clients. So especially working with them and kind of doing standards. So a lot of flagships are here in London, so you can do HQ global standards, which then can be rolled out. So yeah, I have worked in a few places around the world, but at the moment, yeah, we're pretty much London, UK, but just for now.
Got it. And do you see certain trends evolving, be it in London or be it global, in a sense of assigned seating, unassigned seating, activity-based working, or any other name in between those things?
So you mean that people are already doing, or that we're trying to?
The companies are either doing, they want to initiate, or they're curious to know what would work best for their workplace.
Yeah, I think people mostly say they want to modernize their workplace. Of course, after kind of cost and culture things, that's, well, how can we be a modern workplace? Hot desking of course, is a very scary word for most people. Agile has become a scary word for people. Activity-based working is still okay. But a lot of people are trying things. So you go to some really big companies that want 100% agile, 100% hot desking, and then they have to pull it back. So you see, of course, how we went from cellularized offices to what are those things called when you're cubicles?
Cubes, yes, yes.
Cubicles to completely open plan, and now it's coming back. And so I honestly you see a little bit of everything, and I think that's where we really come in, because people hear about these trends and they just say, oh, well, let's just do it, and it actually might not work for you, might not work for your people, and you have to take different elements from hot desking, from activity-based working, from agile, to then say, okay, this is actually the best solution for you.
Yeah. Whenever someone asks, like, I want to modernize my workplace, does that mean the same thing in each company?
No. It depends on what they're already doing. So you have some workplaces that are already pretty modern. Who's like some of our clients currently at Thirdway, they already have activity-based working. They already have lots of cool settings and breakout places, but they might not be using them correctly. And so they've put in all this great stuff, which people would say is modern working, and they have flexible hours and things, but it's just not working for them. And so that is just kind of tweaking their modern working. And then you have other people who are, lawyers, insurance, all these things, who are incredibly traditional. Offices are still very important. Desks are still very important. And modernizing them is taking them quite a few steps forward in some teams, but not all the way to an actual modern workplace. So you have to see where they're starting from. And I think that's, how we've started creating some of our tools to gauge, where are you now? What is the opportunity for you? Not, okay, great, you're, here, take Agile and run with it.
Right. So then how do you assess where they are in that agile matrix?
Yeah, so that's why we've created this kind of scale, and the scale will put them on a scale with compared to their other team members, not necessarily externals. And we can benchmark, but this is really more about your space, not what everyone else is doing. So we take a variety of data, the occupancy data, of course, occupancy and utilization, and then a lot of survey responses. So how important is a desk to you, or meeting rooms, or the technology, kind of a variety of questions that help us ascertain how desk bound they are, or if working from home is a thing, or any of that. And then we also contextualize it with anecdotal. So I think that's what makes it unique, is that we have hard data, and we add some other hard data, and then we contextualize it with anecdotal findings. So it actually also has a bit of a score. And where you find that goes is then people sit down here and the low part of the scale, which means they still basically need one-to-one desking. That's people with Bloomberg terminals and things. They're not going to be able to work from home. They're not going to be able to go anywhere else. And then you have people on the other side who are sales, project directors. They're in and out the office. They probably don't need a desk at all, but they need some kind of space. And then you have people who are in the middle who just want some other activity-based spaces. They might need your kind of common 8 to 10 desking situation, and then they can have project rooms and breakout spaces and the other things that are necessary for them.
Yeah, and you find that the data obviously you've collected, and then you present that option of 8 to 10, right? So basically, it allows you, to your point, to shrink down the actual desk that you put in, and then obviously gives you additional space that you can put in a project room or some breakout space or collaboration area. Do you find when you present the data that the teams buy into it? And is it the team that buys into it? Is the manager? Is it an executive who typically then who buys into whatever your recommendations are?
Yeah, we like to work with the team leaders that we initially interviewed. And so it's a little bit of more manpower, but we package all of their individual teams' information up and we say, this is what we found. So you come at them fully evidence-based. So this is exactly what your occupancy and utilization are. This is how you're using it. These are your survey responses. This is how people feel about it. Any other kind of data we have. And then at the end, we present, so this is your score, and this is your opportunity for agility. So it's never, this is what you should be doing. We're going to recommend this. It's, it's talking with them. So our opportunity for agility, or your opportunity for agility rather, is a 4.8, which means you could work 8 to 10 desks. Will that actually work for you? Or do you have people coming in more often? Do you have other vendors or suppliers that come sit with you? Could you have less desks? And we also say, you guys said you needed these kind of different spaces. So you actually walk them through what their neighborhood could look like, and you get them to sign that off, and then you can sign off the whole thing. But I think it's really important to do it at a team level, because everyone is so different.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the biggest, I think, challenges that I've experienced, and I know through managing the portfolio that I manage, and the response that we get from our employees, is noise management, is ability to book a meeting room ad hocly, right? Something that, okay, you're going to get together. How does, what you're doing allow you to, be it educate, be it help design a workplace that actually those things don't happen for your clients?
How does it happen, as in problems with enough meeting rooms or booking meeting rooms? That kind
Yeah,
of
so
thing?
how does a client get how do they know? Because, we never know how a workplace is actually going to evolve, right? Because in essence, we're recreating that, or we're creating it. So how do we get comfortable that that's one of the biggest problems that we know across workplace is noise and access to meeting rooms. So how do you get customers or clients comfortable with the fact that this is the right metric, this is the right ratio, this is the right proximity to a meeting room or a quiet space or somewhere to go take a private call, whatever that is? How do you sort of evolve or develop that?
Sure. So it starts with the team by team basis. And then of course, it's when you also bring in design and technology to come help out. So how we think about it is people and how they interact with their space, supported by technology, and of course how design that can be interpreted into design. So we're lucky that we're in the group that we have designers, we have technologists that we can go to and say, okay, great, this is how we see these individual spaces working. Now, how is this then promoted? And that's where you get into the space standards. Our team in interiors is very good at acoustic proofing things.
Mm-hmm.
So when we know, for example, on one client I was working on with them, we had not a call center, but kind of like the IT help desk. There's like 6 of those desks here. And then you had like some other kind of central ops functions. And then you had a kitchen over here. So these guys are going to be a bit noisy, but they need a quiet background so that on their call, you can't hear the kitchen. And those people don't want to hear these people. So of course we have that. So, it's just putting in, we put in some barriers or lockers or some storage, that was padded around this side. And then with these guys, we put just a small kind of glass barrier. And so all those things are definitely considered. And that's why, being in a unique position with the group, I can pull at a moment's notice any ideas from other design or technology to make sure that it's all thought about.
Yeah, no, that's great context because, as you know, there's so much media out there about the open plan office, the noise impact, how it impacts productivity. There's nowhere to go with it, and all the obstacles that people put out there. In your experience, do you buy into that? Do you see that? Is that what you're witnessing? How would you respond to some of those media information that gets publicized? I mean, one that comes to mind is a Harvard Business Review that basically showed, I think it was huge reduction in productivity because of noise levels.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think anybody who's worked in an open plan office of any kind knows that it's definitely a problem. And I see that's a poll on the site right now, which I have answered, by the way. But it's definitely, and that's why it's coming back. And that's why what I was saying earlier about going from cellular to cubes to open plan to now this activity-based working is everyone's noticing the levels of production. So that's where activity-based working comes into this, because it's giving people, people are able to work in the right space for whatever they're doing. Because I'm with a client at the moment where they thrive on that noise and that buzz, and they have to be there. Everyone wants to be in the office for that. So of course that works for them. For other clients, of course, it doesn't. For myself, it doesn't always. So sometimes I'm at my desk, with my team all around me. We have whiteboards doing all these things. And then some days, like today, I work from home, or we have, some quiet booths, those kinds of things. So which with some of the plans we do for our clients, of course, it's making sure that everyone has access to those spaces, because no fail, it's always, I can't find a quiet place to work. I can't do focused work. Almost every single client says that. So it's being able to provide, phone booths for those calls, enough meeting rooms, enough the right size of meeting rooms to have small meetings and breakouts, and then also things like libraries where there's no phones allowed. It's very quiet work, it's very focused work, and everyone knows that. And that's, of course, where then etiquette and the change management comes in, so making sure that people are using them correctly. And that's, that's how you get away from, even if there's some open plan, you just give them the spaces to go away to do either the loud collaborative work and or the quiet work.
Yeah, the library point is such an important point. And to your point, right, when you call something a library, the etiquette, everyone knows what to expect. I mean, we have offices where we've created quiet spaces and they're never quiet because they're just called quiet spaces, where a library, everyone knows what the right etiquette is. And it's so important. And a lot of you brought that into it. So you've done your analysis, you've done your interviews, and you put together a package that basically summarizes all your data. How then does that get communicated to the project lead that you're working with the company? How does that get put together?
Yeah, sure. So we meet with them weekly. So it's a really co-creative process. They kind of know what's going on the whole time. We put all that stuff together. We present it back to them. We present the findings back to whichever level it needs to be. It's different with every client. If you have the project team and a steer co and that kind of thing. So we present that all back. And then when we actually start being able to do the designs, we like to put together personas. And so you said these are your personas based on your people. And these are some user journeys. And then you can start designing around these user journeys. So once you know who's in the space and what their requirements and needs are, if it is a design project as well, I can go back to the designers who I'm working with, whether it be the architects, the interior architects, or interior design team with interiors, and say, okay, so now that you see this, what are these kind of spaces? What's going to be best for them? And we've already kind of done a bit of a layout for each team, a bit of a neighborhood working. But then it goes back to what does this whole big space look like? And you can start, doing also, the look and feel and things like that. But it's more around designing for those people that are in the space.
So part of your assessment, you would actually create different types of workspaces that they can, your client could look at and ascertain whether they like that or whether they don't like it, if it would work or wouldn't work. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, so either on plan, you say you kind of could do 3 different examples. So this is a traditional or conservative, but still a little bit different. Or you have this as, fully agile, where no one has an office. And you usually kind of come back to the center saying, here's where you can have a little bit of everything and everyone feels comfortable in it. And then again, with where we are in the group, what we can do is we can then run some trials with people. So we have some space in the office, and our furniture team can bring in all these different work settings. you can bring in the project team, or you can bring in, all the people you've engaged with or others, and get them coming in and voting on things they like, or, putting voting stickers on things, trying out sitting on things, and really getting people involved, which I think is a huge part of change management, where they can trial furniture, they can trial coffee, or doing any of that stuff, which just helps bring them all along the journey.
Yeah, no, I do, and I totally agree. I love it. I love it. So when is the optimal time for a client to engage with you? Is it before they bring in an architectural firm, or is it when they actually bring on an architectural firm, then that's when they should engage with someone like yourself? What do you think is the best time?
Yeah, the best time is before they know it's the best time. It's usually, because we want as much as time as possible before they have to make a decision.
Mhm.
So, whenever their lease break is, or that kind of thing, we want them to be understanding how they work now and have a strategy before they're coming to, to the architects, or the interior side, and being able to really have the time to dig into it. So, those are the clients we really want to get to, which is, oh, you don't have to make a decision for 2 or 3 years. Let's
Yeah.
figure out what that decision is going to entail.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, you mentioned previously that you work with a lot of companies that are headquartered in London. Do they then take the assessment, the rollout of that workplace, and then funnel it through the rest of their portfolio?
Yeah, they can do. And I think, that there are those, you would know, obviously, as a global, head of workplace yourself, there's space standards that you want to roll out, but then each business will still need to treat it differently. And so especially you get to, countries perhaps like in Asia, that the working practices are much, much different. So you can take the practices that you did in London, say, well, this is what we rolled out in London. And then you compare and say, we'd like to do the same exact project for you, and then see how it might differ. So some things can be rolled out. Some things you do need to actually get on site in their location, and really say, well, just because London's doing it doesn't mean you have to, but let's make something a bit more comprehensive.
No, it's such an important thing, and my experience has been, you go into a workplace, be it a different city within a country, or a different country to obviously maybe where your headquarters is. And some of the mandates that the senior leadership team want there is, we don't want this space to be that space. Different cities to be, we don't want it to be in New York, we don't want it to be whatever any other city it is. This is what this location is. So it's really important, to your point, to really, really grasp that. So as you sort of look, you obviously, you collect the data, you then formulate what you think the business plan is. What are the key data points that you think are the most important, and any workplace practitioner should really be monitoring and capturing?
Sure. So I think part of that is the engagement surveys. So how are people reacting to any changes you make? So if there's small incremental changes, how are you reacting to that? Either having a manual occupancy study annually or biannually, or sensors put in for a long-term solution, being able to track this stuff all the time, and track how those changes are being taken on, and see if it's working. I have one example of a client here who has a occupancy study every year, and you can see how they reacted to it. So you can have it starts, as soon as they started agile working, everyone was beach toweling, or how would you call that? Claiming their space.
Right.
You can see the next year had dropped down. So of course they finally all realized, okay, this is fine. And so then the client actually was able to put more people in that space. And the next year they found out, again, people were using it even better, and they kept reacting, but it was only annually, because they were doing manual studies once a year. So by being able to use sensors, so I would always say, do a manual study first, see how that's working. And then when you have your new building or your new space, put in sensors. You can look at that all the time. We could come in monthly or quarterly, seeing how the space is used. And then of course the engagement surveys, which is very important for making sure that culture is being monitored and going up, and being anything that has come up is being seen as you're doing something about it, which of course is important. There's one thing actually I saw, and that people they wanted to monitor culture and happiness in real time, and so they had when you leave Heathrow or something, they say, how was your experience? And it's a smiley face or a sad face or a medium face. And you could they would have that by the T points, and you just punch it in, and how are you feeling? They had it around different places. And then they would actually stream the results live, saying, oh, 80% of the workplace is happy today, or we have a 35% unhappiness rate, and they would actually bring in donuts, or they would do something to help bring it up immediately. It's cool.
That is so cool. And happiness is such a thing that, we all want to go after. Productivity is an even bigger one that we all want to go after, but it's really hard to quantify. So I love that happiness thing, just a little smiley face and different floors. And obviously the donuts, who doesn't like donuts? One of my big carrots, I think everyone loves, is ice cream socials. So bring in pots of ice cream, and it's a great thing. So yeah. So obviously, given your experience working all around the world, different industries and so on and so forth, and obviously getting the experience of working with a lot of clients, what is the one advice that you give, or that you've experienced, that would allow an organization or workplace practitioner to maximize workplace productivity and employee experience?
So I think the number one thing is transparency in what they're doing. And if you're doing a project like you would be with us, it's, why we're doing it, why is it happening, how are we trying to make your life better? So before things get too bad, you're telling people that you are working on it, constantly improving your workplace, and whether that be about what's happening with the business, what's happening with the space, what's happening in the outside world to affect it. You're just constantly communicating with everyone, and you're being as transparent as possible. I think that's it. Besides just telling you to make sure you're doing a workplace study very often, it's just make sure you're communicating.
Got it. And obviously, whenever you're dealing with clients, you get to see a lot of things very, very quickly. You get to learn different methodologies, different personalities, different work cultures, and so on and so forth. If someone was looking to get into workplace, would your guidance be to get into a consulting firm so that they can witness a lot of things very quickly? Or would you guide them towards finding a workplace to actually go and work in, where you can affect change and learn actually how all the different facets come together? What would be your guidance?
This depends on what your background is already. Obviously, there's as you're saying, with consultancy, we see so many different clients, so many different industries, that you pick up stuff really quickly. So if someone's really passionate about it, I would recommend just trying to get in, because we do jump head first in. It's always hitting the ground running. There's always stuff happening. So I would recommend that, absolutely. Otherwise, client side, like yourself, it's very valuable to see how things are actually working and how things get taken on. So I think that's really valuable too. And I've talked to a lot of candidates that say, sure, you don't have a lot of client experience, but you've been my client. You've seen how it actually worked, what the approval processes are, and what's possible. So there's no right or wrong way. I think as we know, everyone comes into it differently. But if you want to learn about it quickly, join a workplace consultancy, and yeah. You'll learn a lot.
I'm sure. And I certainly, I work at a workplace, and I've always had that question in my head, what's the right advice to give to folks? So thank you for sharing. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you want to sort of touch on before we finish up here, Amanda?
Yeah, sure. I think there's something else that we're really passionate about at the moment, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but it's called neurodiversity.
Mm-hmm.
Familiar, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So neurodiversity, for the viewers, is anything that's not neurotypical. So autism, Asperger's, dyslexia, dyspraxia, those kinds of things. We've had a lot of clients coming forward interested, or one particular client who actually brought it to our attention. And it's something that we always thought about, and we pride ourselves on inclusive design already. But they said, well, it's not about allowing for them or providing an inclusive design. It's about attracting them. And it completely brought out this beautiful positive spin on it. And then we started doing more and more and more research. And JP Morgan's actually doing a really good program where they have set up different teams with just autistic people on the team, and they outperform, they out-train. First of all, it takes them 3 months to what other people takes 3 years to learn how to do something, and then they outperform them by 50%. And so there's this whole marginalized group of people who are so good at what they do that just haven't been able to get into the workforce. Here in the UK, it's about 83% of people who are autistic are underemployed or unemployed. And it's about the same, about 85% of employers say that they can't find enough good people to do work. So those numbers match almost exactly. It's just kind of a given.
Wow, so, I'm sorry, I can't leave it there. So how do you recruit these people? How do you find these folks?
So part of it is, of course, actively offering things. So having like some people have internships that say these are specifically for the people who may have these different neurodiversities. And I think you have to actively do it, but then also you have to think about the whole process. So it's not just from your workplace being not compliant, but being welcoming. It's from the interview process that, you know, they may not fare as well coming at the tube at the same time as everyone else, and being able to have more flexible interview processes, more flexible hours. If they come in at 10 or 11 and leave at 7 or something, or, you know, work remotely a bit. And then it's, of course, it is the actual space. So if you look at it's BBC in Wales, they have a completely neurodiverse friendly building. It's about materials and patterns and wayfinding that makes it really easy for people to get around. And when you look at the different spaces they need, it's actually all the spaces we want: focus work, quiet work, places to let off some steam. And so that's really similar. So it's actually just, there's a lot of other small things that people don't realize to make it an inclusive workplace.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. I certainly learned something, so thank you. And I'm definitely going to look into it further. Yeah, I definitely want to dig into this. So thank you for sharing, Amanda. Look, thank you. I really appreciate you giving us your time today. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. It's great to be featured along some of the other speakers, and of course yourself. So really exciting, and I'm very keen to maybe chat about neurodiversity next time.